So now that Manchester City have conquered Europe and equalled United's feat from 1999, unfortunately only the most delusional United fan can now claim that United are the best team in Manchester, for the time being at least. Of course, the supercharged, oil-endorsed and probably illegal ascent by Manchester City has, from their point of view, dovetailed perfectly with the retirement of Sir Alex Ferguson, the Glazer ownership and the subsequent implosion across town. Sir Alex Ferguson used to call Manchester City the noisy neighbours, as they crept up to threaten the top four, stealing players from those around, most notably from United Carlos Tevez. But now it's the objective of Manchester United to become the noisy neighbours. But how did Manchester City do it, and is there anything that United can learn from their ascent? But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season, or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com, a link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. This video was written by What If Football. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. So fortunately for Manchester City, financial fair play wasn't much of a twinkle in UEFA's eye when they initially ran absolute roughshod over the transfer market, trying to buy any and all superstars that they could. Although it could be argued, even with FFP, UEFA have done very little to stop City in their tracks. What little restrictions financial fair play did place over City ended up being a blessing in disguise. Also, the departure of the so-called architect of City's transference from Thaksin Shinawatra to Sheikh Mansour in 2008 also would prove to be a blessing in disguise. Soliman Al Fahim really pushed the tag noisy neighbours to the extremes, as City chased players like Kaká, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, with Robinho being the first superstar that they would actually sign. It was only after Al Fahim exited and Khaldoon Al Mubarak would rise to more control at Eastlands that a plan actually formulated. The attempts at aiming for superstars had been scaled back ever so slightly to more incremental improvements, not to say that City were playing Moneyball by any means. First, they took players from Aston Villa in James Milner and Gareth Barry in an attempt to leapfrog them. Then a quartet from Arsenal in Gael Clichy, Emmanuel Adebayor, Kolo Touré and Samir Nasri. Interspersed were the signings from the continent with players that would become club legends like Sergio Aguero, Yaya Touré and David Silva. As their place in the market changed, so did their strategy as they hit a roadblock to perennial success. Since Sir Alex Ferguson has retired, United have made do with crumbs of success, and they themselves have met roadblock after roadblock in their attempt to match Manchester City. City was somewhat fortunate that they didn't have the brand name to generate the type of tax on transfer fees that the world-renowned Manchester United have suffered with in the last 10 years. Yet with the continuous success of Manchester City as they have now become almost the brand name in English football, I guess this excuse begins to hold less water. But it's delving into the hierarchy at both clubs where it becomes clear that there's night and day between the pair. United only hired their first football director in March 2021 when they hired John Murtough. This was the club trying to drag themselves into the 21st century, with their rivals having almost a decade-long head start. While Chelsea now seem like a basket case, under the likes of Marino Granovskaya and Peter Cech, they were lauded in the final days of the Roman Abramovich era. Arsenal meanwhile have toyed with the idea of a football director, and their return to prominence was also hamstrung by Arsene Wenger's retirement. The two outstanding clubs of the past decade in English football, however, have already got ahead of the curve, with City and Liverpool winning the lot before United could even spell football director. Michael Edwards, perhaps the most prominent sporting director English football had ever seen, had defied the lack of investment at Anfield by hand-delivering the perfect squad to fit the plan of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. They won the Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup and Premier League in a 4-year span. And going back even further, 2012 was a pivotal moment for Manchester City's growth. Had the Argentine striker hit the post and United won title number 20, and followed it up with 21 in Sir Alex Ferguson's lap of honour in the subsequent year, little would have changed. 2012 was the most prominent year in Manchester City's history, not because of Sergio Aguero winning the title, but because of the appointment of two men that set the wheels in motion for Pep Guardiola to become manager. 2012 was a year Guardiola took his famous sabbatical after suffering from a Jose Mourinho-inspired burnout at the Camp Nou. Whilst he wasn't ready to take the reins at the Etihad, City also weren't ready to accept him just yet either. The long-term plan was enacted in the first few months of the 2012-2013 season to eventually bring Guardiola to the club. First in came Ferran Soriano, former vice president at Barcelona, who was appointed the CEO at the Etihad and almost immediately slashed City's losses in half. And he was brutal with his decisions, sacking the most successful manager for 4 decades in City's history, with Roberto Mancini leaving the club. And Manuel Pellegrini's appointment from Malaga into the club as manager was merely a conduit for a smooth transition to Guardiola. Second and most importantly was the acquisition of Txiki Begiristain as director of football, the same role that he had undertaken at the Camp Nou between 2003 and 2010. Whilst Pep Guardiola suffered upon Joan Laporta's exit as club president, Begiristain knew that he had to depart Barcelona upon the end of the president's tenure. Whilst Manuel Pellegrini's 3-year tenure as Manchester City manager was largely underwhelming, it captured a league title and 2 League Cup crowns and paved the way for Guardiola, and the rest is history. Let's look at Manchester United for comparison. 2013 was a bombshell that many clubs' rivals had been waiting for. Both Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill departed, and in the space of 12 months each of Paul Scholes, Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic and Patrice Evra all followed suit on the pitch. While Sir Alex Ferguson had attempted to future-proof the club from the advancing age of these key players, with Phil Jones, Chris Smalling, Alexander Butner, Shinji Kagawa, Tom Cleverley and others all being brought in, they now all fell under the umbrella of a more potent Glazer family and their bumbling new CEO. Whilst Ferran Soriano was busy halving City's deficit, Ed Woodward made manoeuvres in the commercial space that left him spitting out the infamous remark, "We can do things in the transfer market that other clubs can only dream of. Watch this space." With no director of football to speak of, a banker was in charge of the club's transfers. No wonder the approach to the market under Woodward looked like a blind pound shop Galactico wannabe, trying to grope at anything at arm's length. So now United are left in a hole with financial fair play, unable to do things in the transfer market that other clubs dream of all the time. Players like Erling Haaland, Jude Bellingham and Moises Caicedo, a potential backbone of a Champions League winning team, could have all been bought for a combined £25 million. Yet the football-savvy families of Haaland and Bellingham recognised the utter swamp that United were, and so rejected the club for the more profitable springboard that Borussia Dortmund would provide. Moises Caicedo, alternatively, is a lesson in smart scouting. £3 million was turned into £115 million in the matter of 2 years by Brighton. Of course, this decade-long shambolic transfer market performance has had its drawbacks, with the club now unable to afford players that would allow the club to genuinely compete with the likes of Arsenal and City. In another universe, Harry Kane and Rasmus Højlund are both easily purchased. The latter is able to learn from the former, and a succession plan is in place. An incremental improvement is something that Erik ten Hag appeared to be on course for, with a stunning first season which featured bronze in the Premier League and gold in the League Cup. And of course it is still achievable, even if the club's transfer activity still suffers from the haphazard nature of the typical Manchester United transfer sagas. The overspending of the summer of 2022's necessities in Antony and Casemiro came home to roost last summer. But I guess a positive can be taken in the fact that both Murta and Ten Hag recognised the need to abandon the Harry Kane transfer and not fall into the same pitfalls of the Frankie de Jong failed transfer of 2022. The smallest increment of improvement, but one nonetheless. Whilst relying on a world-class director of football of the ilk of Michael Edwards to defy the up-pinning rule of the Glazer family will likely prove a stretch, there is an ability for the club to stick to one vision and bide their time. The window to success will eventually open again, and so whilst the Glazer family remains, perhaps the best thing to do is to simply stay in the game and accept that in the transfer window United are going to have to move a lot more like Liverpool than City. Now I will admit it may sound like the latter days of Arsene Wenger to make do with Champions League qualification, but that honestly might be the best case realistic scenario for the time being. I'm confident that the window to success will open again when Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp leave their managerial post in the Premier League, hopefully never to return again. Manchester United should be planning for that, as that could happen in the next 2 to 3 years, and they can do this by sticking with the current management, edge towards new ownership by all means possible, and turn their backs on the shiny foil of expensive superstar signings and build a team for the late 2020s rather than just for next season. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out, and you can check out some of my other videos which will be linked in the description below.